In the sleepy town of Charlotte, Michigan, the enigmatic death of Roberto Caraballo remained shrouded in mystery for over a decade, until the shocking discovery of his incinerated remains in 2015. A pivotal DNA revelation would ultimately expose a stunning truth, incriminating those in his innermost circle. Roberto Caraballo, a 37-year-old resident of Charlotte, Michigan, had navigated a life marked by both personal struggles and legal entanglements before his tragic demise in 2002. Following his release from federal prison, where he had served time for undisclosed reasons, Roberto's life was marred by difficulties, including fractured relationships and persistent conflicts. He was married to Beverly McCallum, with whom he shared a tumultuous relationship characterized by discord and personal turmoil. Roberto resided with Beverly and her daughter, Diane Ducharme, in a residence on Horatio Street in Charlotte, a household marked by tension and strife. In 2002, detectives uncovered a metal footlocker containing the charred remnants of a human being, whose identity was obscured due to the extensive burning. Despite the abundance of evidence indicative of a heinous crime, including a hammer, splintered fragments of a wooden baseball bat, and remnants of a plastic bag and rope, investigators faced significant challenges in reconstructing the events surrounding the tragedy. Forensic experts meticulously collected and analyzed physical evidence from the crime scene, yet the initial investigation yielded scant leads. The case remained a perplexing enigma, with detectives diligently pursuing leads and exploring various theories over the course of several years. Notwithstanding their tireless efforts, the case remained unsolved, and the victim's identity remained shrouded in mystery until several years later. A major breakthrough occurred in 2015, more than a decade after the tragic event, when Diane Ducharme, who was serving a life sentence for first-degree murder, approached authorities and provided pivotal information implicating her mother, Beverly McCallum, and Christopher McMillan. This new evidence prompted a comprehensive re-examination of the case, casting new light on the mysterious circumstances. Utilizing cutting-edge forensic techniques, including DNA analysis, investigators confirmed Roberto's identity and established a definitive link between the suspects and the crime. The crucial information provided by Ducharme facilitated the identification of Roberto's remains and connected the suspects to the physical evidence collected from the crime scene. In May 2002, the basement of Roberto Caraballo's home in Charlotte, Michigan, became the scene of a brutal and premeditated attack. Roberto was lured into the basement by his wife and her daughter, accompanied by Christopher McMillan, as part of a meticulously planned violent assault. Beverly initiated the assault by pushing Roberto down the basement stairs, where her daughter struck him on the head with a hammer, inflicting severe trauma. Beverly then took over, repeatedly striking Roberto with the hammer until it became lodged in his skull, causing fatal injuries. Subsequently, they asphyxiated him using a plastic bag and rope, ensuring his demise. The body was then placed inside a metal footlocker, transported to a secluded location in Ottawa County, and incinerated with gasoline in an attempt to conceal the evidence. The partially burned remains were left inside the locker, hidden in a blueberry field, where they remained until their eventual discovery. In 2019, Christopher McMillan, a key figure in the case, was taken into custody and charged with second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit the egregious crime, facing allegations of complicity in the heinous act. McMillan's testimony proved instrumental in implicating Beverly McCallum and Diane Ducharme in the 2002 murder of Roberto Caraballo. His guilty plea, part of a plea agreement, acknowledged his role in the heinous crime. McMillan's cooperation was crucial in reconstructing the events of May 2002, including the vicious and deadly assault on Roberto and the subsequent clandestine disposal of his body. He received a sentence of 15 to 40 years in prison for his involvement. Beverly McCallum's apprehension in Italy in 2020 marked a significant breakthrough, followed by her extradition to Michigan in 2022. Despite her claims of innocence and her defense team's arguments that she was merely an accessory, the jury delivered a guilty verdict for second-degree murder in April 2024. McCallum was sentenced to 40 to 60 years in prison for the murder and an additional 10 to 15 years for the desecration and mutilation of Roberto's body. She received credit for 1,500 days served, including her time in Italian custody. The sentencing brought a measure of justice and closure to the case, concluding the lengthy and intricate investigation. On June 8, 1964, a fisherman made a gruesome discovery while sailing along a river in the eastern part of Tip City, Dayton, Ohio, stumbling upon a severed human arm in a gravel pit located on State Route 571. The fisherman promptly alerted the authorities, who subsequently launched a search effort to locate the remaining body parts. Over the next few days, additional remains were found in the nearby Miami-Erie Canal, including a torso, legs, and a head. The recovered body parts were later identified as belonging to 43-year-old Daisy Shelton. Despite the passage of time, the police were unable to uncover any leads or suspects in the case, hindered by the limited advancements in DNA technology. Decades later, in 2017, a witness came forward with crucial information, revealing that they had witnessed a man attacking Daisy before dismembering her body. Although the police quickly identified a suspect, this new development raised more questions than answers. In March 2024, the case was revisited 6 decades after Daisy's tragic death. Through diligent efforts, detectives were finally able to reconstruct the events surrounding the crime. However, the outcome was unexpected and surprising. On the same day in 1964, a fisherman sailing along the river in eastern Tip City made a shocking discovery, finding a severed arm in a gravel pit. He promptly notified the police before departing the scene. A search ensued, led by the Miami County Sheriff, to locate the remaining remains. But the task was challenging due to the 50-foot depth of the gravel pit. Following the initial discovery, the police recovered the second severed arm by the next day. Subsequently, a tied-up bag containing a torso was found in the canal near the gravel pit by another fisherman. This prompted another thorough search of the area by the police, employing boats, pumps, and experienced divers. Over the course of 2 weeks, divers retrieved additional body parts, including a human head and a leg, from the same waterway, approximately a kilometer away from the initial arm discovery. Through facial feature analysis, Ohio police identified the remains as those of 43-year-old Daisy Shelton, a resident of Dayton. Daisy Evelyn Shelton was born on February 19, 1921, in Portsmouth, Scioto County, Ohio, and worked at Dayton State Hospital, Montgomery County. She was a frequent patron of the Leo Bar on Springfield Street in Dayton. Daisy had 2 adult children, Rodney and Rita, from her marriage to Harvey Edward Shelton, which ended due to his struggles with alcoholism. Her son, Rodney, had joined the Navy after graduating from Kaiser High School and hadn't seen his mother in several years prior to her remains being found. At the time of her death, Daisy resided at 4600 Springfield Street and had recently been laid off from Delco, an automotive electronics corporation in the Miami Valley. Following the recovery of the identified body parts, police conducted interviews with her family members. Rita, Daisy's daughter, informed Chief Deputy Steve Lord of the Miami County Sheriff's Office that she last saw her mother in late August 1963, when Daisy mentioned she'd return home that evening but never did. The family subsequently filed a missing person report. For nearly a year, there were no updates on the case until Daisy's dismembered body was discovered in June 1964. Between her disappearance and January 1965, police interviewed around 75 individuals who knew Daisy or lived near her in Dayton, including her son, Rodney Shelton. A forensic examination of Daisy's remains revealed wire sutures in her torso, indicating recent internal surgery. Further investigation confirmed that she had undergone abdominal surgery shortly before her disappearance. Suture marks around her neck and torso suggested strangulation prior to dismemberment. Additional analysis revealed bone defects, skull fractures, and arthritis in one joint. The level of decomposition indicated that her remains had been in the water for 6 to 9 months before discovery. Over the years, detectives received tips that Daisy may have encountered a human trafficking ring after her layoff, potentially leading to her murder. Eastwood Park, a popular spot among young people, was one of the last places she was seen. Despite appeals for information, no new leads emerged until 2017, when a witness came forward with crucial details. The anonymous witness confessed to a nurse while hospitalized that they had witnessed Daisy's murder in 1964. Police interviewed the witness after their discharge, and they described how they saw a man attack Daisy with a hammer at a home on Springfield Street, leading to her death. 2 men then dismembered her body and scattered the remains in nearby waterways. Using age progression technology, police identified and detained the suspect, who lived on the same street as the crime scene and had worked with Daisy at Delco. Initially, the suspect denied knowing Daisy, but after further interrogation, they admitted to knowing her and revealed that a box from their house had been used to transport her body parts, explaining the presence of their fingerprints on the box. Daisy's last X-ray records, dated May 29, 1963, showed she was 4 feet 11 inches tall, weighed 98 pounds, and had gray hair. The suspect conceded that Daisy's murder might have occurred within his residence, which would account for the presence of her DNA at the scene. Despite this, the suspect, whose identity was not disclosed by the authorities, alleged that the witness was framing him. However, he acknowledged that his circumstances could be perceived as incriminating and potentially lead to charges. Throughout the investigation, the suspect consistently maintained his innocence in relation to Daisy Shelton's murder. Over the subsequent years, law enforcement endeavored to confirm the suspect's culpability with absolute certainty. His inability to provide a convincing alibi and the inconsistencies in his narrative raised suspicions. Investigators explored potential motives, including a personal vendetta or financial disputes. Utilizing advanced forensic technology, detectives re-examined the evidence, including the burlap bag containing Daisy's torso, the box allegedly used to transport her body parts, and the witness statement. The results of these analyses reinforced the police's conviction that the suspect was withholding information. However, a significant development altered the trajectory of the investigation. In 2017, the witness testified against the suspect in the grand jury's office, but passed away before the case could proceed to prosecution. Undeterred, law enforcement continued to pursue leads. A few years later, they identified 3 individuals likely involved in Daisy Shelton's death, but regrettably, all had deceased before the case could be brought to trial. In 2023, prosecutor Anthony Kendall conducted a thorough review of the case, incorporating the witness's testimony from 2017, the suspect's statement, and the accumulated evidence. Based on the comprehensive analysis, he determined that sufficient evidence existed to proceed with prosecution, potentially leading to the suspect's trial. Regrettably, the suspect had passed away in September 2022 at the age of 92. And their identity remained undisclosed. On March 29, 2024, over 6 decades after Daisy's tragic death, her murder case was officially marked as resolved and closed, with no living individuals to be held accountable. Daisy's granddaughter, Maria Walling, expressed her shock and distress regarding the heinous crime. despite never having met her grandmother. She endeavored to preserve Daisy's memory through the stories shared by her father, Rodney Shelton, who passed away in 2020. Maria found solace in the case's closure, stating, "Dad, justice is served. I'm glad you're with your mom." The Miami County Sheriff's Office expressed relief in providing justice for long-forgotten cold cases. Although the perpetrator was identified, the motive behind Daisy's murder remained unknown, and the passage of time had silenced those who might have held answers. The case's resolution brings hope to families awaiting justice for their loved ones, while serving as a poignant reminder of the enduring impact of Daisy's kind heart and warm smile. On March 2, 1973, the savagely slain corpse of 46-year-old Ann Woodward was discovered inside the watering hole she co-owned with her spouse in Moab, Utah. The crime scene revealed a ghastly act of savagery. The law enforcement investigation yielded several suspects, including the notorious serial killer Ted Bundy. However, the case encountered numerous setbacks and ultimately went dormant. For 51 years, the atrocious murder haunted the small desert town of Moab. In 2024, a previously undisclosed piece of evidence came to light, finally resolving the case and confirming long-held suspicions. Woody's Tavern, which Ann and her husband, Leslie Woody Woodward, owned and operated, remained largely unchanged since its opening in 1952. The tavern was a popular gathering spot for locals, including cowpokes, miners, and people from all walks of life. Tragedy struck on the morning of March 2, 1973, when Woody discovered Ann's partially disrobed body on the floor between two billiard tables. Ann wore only a brassiere and an unbuttoned blouse, with her pants pulled down and a knot still wrapped tightly around her neck. The cash register had been emptied, with approximately $75 missing. Woody, stunned and in shock, contacted his friend, the Grand County Sheriff. However, the sheriff's office did not have jurisdiction over the case, which fell under the Moab Police Department's purview. This led to a series of missteps and mishandling of the case. When Moab Police Chief Melvin Dalton arrived at the scene, he found the area breached with numerous people entering and exiting freely. The autopsy revealed additional gruesome details, including evidence of pummeling and assault, with Ann's time of death estimated between 1:40 a.m. and 2:30 a.m. Despite gathering 29 pieces of evidence, the investigation faced significant challenges, including a lack of clear leads and insufficient training. The Moab Police Department identified 25 potential suspects and administered lie detector tests but made no arrests. 3 suspects stood out: 2 local mining workers and Ted Bundy. However, concrete evidence linking Bundy to the crime was never found. Chief Dalton collected DNA samples and retrieved Camel cigarette butts for analysis, but the technology to process the evidence did not exist at the time. The case eventually went dormant, leaving a lasting impact on Ann's family. Her murder led to a downward spiral of despair, isolation, and trauma for her children and husband. Rumors suggesting Woody's involvement in the murder further exacerbated the situation, ultimately shattering the family. Woody eventually remarried and sold the businesses he had started with Ann, including Woody's Tavern. Releasing the tavern, where a devastating tragedy had unfolded, brought him a measure of solace. However, the family struggled to overcome the anguish of not knowing who was responsible for their pain. Ann Woodward's case held profound personal significance for Chief Melvin Dalton, who remained invested in it even after leaving the department in 1980. He maintained a connection with Ann's children until the early 2000s, but unfortunately he passed away without ever knowing the truth about her murder. In 2006, Susan Woodward approached Moab Police Chief Mike Navarre, leading to the case being reopened. Although DNA technology had advanced substantially, the identity of Anne's killer remained a mystery, and the case went cold again. 16 years later, in 2022, Moab police officer Jeremy Drexler took charge of the investigation, determined to solve the case. On September 14, 2023, Drexler found 2 cardboard boxes in a Grand County storage unit containing evidence from the original 1973 investigation, including Anne's clothing from the night of her murder. The boxes had been moved from the evidence room to an outbuilding, making them hard to locate. Despite the challenges, Drexler thoroughly examined the contents. By November 2023, the evidence was submitted to the Utah State Crime Lab for examination. In May 2024, the results revealed that the DNA on Anne's clothing was definitively linked to Douglas Chudomelka. Notably, Chudomelka had been identified as a potential suspect early in the investigation, one of the 3 primary suspects considered at the time. At 25, Chudomelka had moved to Utah for mining work and had a criminal record spanning multiple states. What particularly caught the detective's attention was that his mid-1960s Ford sedan matched the description of the car witnesses saw parked next to Anne's truck on March 1, 1973. When investigators questioned Chudomelka, he claimed he hadn't been at Woody's Tavern that night, but had spent the evening drinking at the Westerner Grill. His girlfriend provided an alibi, stating Chudomelka arrived home around 2 a.m. However, the bartender at the Westerner Grill contradicted this, saying Chudomelka wasn't there that night. On July 3, 1973, Chudomelka was arrested for domestic violence. During this time, his girlfriend told police that Chudomelka had confessed to killing Anne Woodward, but later recanted and refused to cooperate further. Detective Melvin Dalton had collected hair samples from Chudomelka, but insufficient evidence hindered the case's progress. Even when Anne's case was reopened in 2006, detectives attempted to contact the girlfriend, but she declined to cooperate. Following the murder, Chudomelka departed Moab and became a truck driver. In 1978, he returned to Nebraska, his home state, where he lived a quiet life until his death in 2002, never facing justice for his crimes. Regarding motive, Drexler hypothesizes that Chudomelka may have been enraged after losing money to Anne in a poker game. The $50 she won from him was found in her pockets, and Chudomelka paid his rent 2 days later. Although Drexler notes that it's impossible to confirm if the rent was paid with the stolen money, it remains a possibility. On June 28, 2024, Drexler revealed in a press conference that Chudomelka's DNA was found on all the buttons of Anne's shirt and the inside of her pants, indicating he removed the pants and confirming his responsibility for the assault and murder. The pants, as seen here, were white and blue, with the blue portion being the inside. This is crucial to recognize, as it would be significant in court if Chudomelka were alive. When the pants were removed, the right leg turned inside out, while the left leg did not, meaning Anne was strangled with the inside of her pant leg. In a bar setting, DNA can transfer through contact, but if pants are inside out, internal DNA transfer is impossible. Additionally, Chudomelka's DNA was found on a glass and the seat next to where Anne sat before her murder. Detective Drexler affirmed that if Chudomelka were still alive, he would have faced justice for his actions. If Doug were still alive, I would have sought an arrest warrant to apprehend him in Fremont, Nebraska, for this crime, Drexler stated, emphasizing that sufficient evidence exists to indict Chudomelka for Anne Woodward's murder on March 2, 1973. Authorities announced that Chudomelka's DNA will be entered into the Combined DNA Index System, an extensive database for monitoring convicted offenders. This will enable law enforcement agencies nationwide to investigate Chudomelka's potential involvement in other unsolved cases once Anne Woodward's case is officially closed. At the press conference, Annie Dalton, Anne Woodward's granddaughter, expressed the Woodward family's gratitude to the authorities for providing answers after 5 decades. Thank everybody for me. I just want to say thank you so much for caring enough to investigate. Thank you to both agencies for putting aside past differences and collaborating. I think this closure has been long overdue, and I want to thank everyone involved. Anne's eldest child, Leslie Woodward, acknowledged that the answers won't bring full closure. There's no closure for me, it's ongoing. She's still gone, and my children never knew her. But I'm relieved the speculation about my father can be laid to rest. It shattered his heart and our family. Perhaps now the recovery process can begin.